find your breath, put the attention of your mind in your breath, and just follow it without trying to change it, just going inward. And all on, just, you can rub it on your wrist, and then just put it over your eyebrow. Allow your eyes to be soft or close, and rub your hands and feel the energy that you are. Rub your hands. And if you open your hands a little bit, just notice that energy that is coming from within. And of course, we're connected to the heart of the earth, and we're also connected to the heart of the universe. Cover your eyes and feel that energy, and just lead your fingers and your palms on your face. If you feel like you've been a little tense, you can also lead it into your neck, and find that moment of stillness within yourself. Continuing to follow your breath. Visualize a light within your heart center, not to the side, but the middle of your chest. And visualize that light, that energy spreading throughout your body. Continuing to follow the breath, which is really your connection to life. Breathing in is the first thing we do when we're born into this earth plane. And breathing out is the last thing we do before passing on. See that light within you. And it is from that higher light that you can connect with others and see their own divine light shining bright. And that's where all of your contributions to today and to this amazing work that you're doing all together will come from. Remember throughout the day that at any point you can return to this stillness, to this inner beauty and inner strength, this clarity, this ever shining light that you are. Follow your breath for 3 more full breaths. And slowly come back to the screen to join everybody else. Feeling your connection to your inner self, to your higher self, to this beautiful earth that houses and nourishes us all, and to the center of the universe, to which we are all connected. Thank you, and have a wonderful, productive day. If you want to later on connect with me or to aflorar, just contact Melanie. I will be with you on and off throughout your beautiful retreat. Best of luck.
Thank you, Marty. I think Yvonne is up next. What you got, girl?
All right, my job this morning is to introduce Miss Johni Ison. Johnny is the senior neighborhood liaison for the Center for Neighborhoods, and she is committed to helping make sure that our communities reach sustainable change, which I applaud her for that. Her roots are grounded in West Louisville, and she remains passionate about the progress of neighborhoods throughout West Louisville. So we have that in common as well. She's getting a master's in social work through U of L, where she hopes to eventually heal the world. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Johni Ison.
I am, most people call me Johni. And like she said, I am the senior neighborhood liaison. I'm actually been at CFM for 2 years today. So yay, excited about that. I am one of those young, passionate people that you all were talking about when we first hopped on this morning. Like she said, I grew up in West Louisville. I'm very passionate about West Louisville. I'm passionate about all Louisville neighborhoods, but I'm super passionate about seeing sustainable change. I try to make sure I say that word every time, sustainable. We want to see change that can be upheld over the years. So, today I'm going to be doing a presentation over asset based community development. Noel, do I need to pull that up or are you?
I can pull it up for you if you prefer.
So, technically, this training that we're about to get into, it's really over 2 hours on a good day. But today I have 20 minutes to really kind of talk to you about asset based community development. It's a different approach to create and change in neighborhoods, and it's an amazing approach. I'm excited to kind of get you all started on it. So, okay. So, go ahead, Noel, next slide. If you all have any questions at any time, you can drop it in the chat box, but you also can step in and interrupt me. I don't think I'll be taking the whole 20 minutes. So, asset based community development, we call it ABCD for short. Michael Forbush went to the ABCD Institute, learned all of this knowledge about ABCD, and then brought it back to Louisville to use in our communities. Next. Okay, so the dilemma. So, on here, you have a glass that's half full, half empty. So whenever you look at the half full, half empty glass, you see that the half empty kind of refers to the deficiencies and needs of people and communities, and the half full kind of looks at the positive, the assets and capacities of communities, the gifts and talents of the people in communities. And with ABCD, the approach likes to look at the half full glass. So we like to look at communities and neighborhoods by their assets and capacities, by their people that hold gifts and talents. This is really a neighborhood needs map. This is the type of map that you look at and that you get when you are looking at the deficiencies and the needs of a neighborhood. You typically do see at least one of these issues in neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods actually have all of these issues. But this is the answers that you get when you ask people what is wrong with their neighborhoods and when you are having a negative perspective of your neighborhood. Having this type of map or looking at your neighborhood from a needs based perspective has its consequences that we'll talk about a little bit later. Next. Okay, this is a community asset map, and this is how ABCD wants you to look at your neighborhood. It wants you to break it down about all the different parts of your neighborhood and the positives and gifts that these different resources can give you. So like in the middle, you see that you have the gifts of individuals, and then that connects to everything else. So all the assets in the community can be interconnected. And when they are connected, it makes them much stronger. When I go into a community, I typically try to connect with a resident or multiple residents. And then this is a part that I use to kind of learn the neighborhood that I'm going to be working with. So I might meet up with a resident, we might walk around the neighborhood or drive, or multiple residents, and we might take a map of their neighborhood and start writing down these different things that exist within the neighborhood. It's always positive because even people within their neighborhood sometimes don't know about that small neighborhood gym that could change their life. So even if your goal is not to really do work right now in your neighborhood, just even going around your neighborhood and learning what's in there that you did not know existed is really great. So this community asset map can also build connections among neighbors. Two neighbors can get together and walk around and do this, and that can be the start of building their relationship. So community asset maps can be useful for a multitude of things, but this is really what pushes ABCD in neighborhoods. Next. I'm a little sick this week, so I gotta keep the water right here. Okay, so earlier we looked at that needs map and we talked about the consequences. So institutions and funders basically focus neighborhoods on their needs. When you go to apply for grants, what do they ask for? They would like to know the needs of your community, and then they want you to give percentages and breakdowns and how you plan to basically take over a need. And it's usually a need like we've seen on the needs map: homelessness and lack of resources and things in that way. So when you have that focus, it typically can create a mindset for residents in their neighborhood to feel like they are deficient, to believe their local relationships are damaged, which also means that they're not repairable. And that is not a healthy mindset, which can also push, it's unmotivating when you feel like that you have damaged relationships when you need relationships to really create change. The consequences also look like narrowly defined programs. So you're turning in and focusing on one need, and then you're having programs really created around that one need when there's a lot more things that is needed in a neighborhood. They also typically, this can cause programs and systems to be created in neighborhoods that are not really representative of the neighborhood as well. It helps to focus, it makes the neighbors really focus on leaders who magnify these deficiencies, because of course, if there are the people who are going to, give you help around these needs or these resources, those are the people you're going to lean on. Ultimately, this can lead to communities having poor self-image and really have them experience hopelessness, which could then push them out, and it's a way and not make them want to really continue to try to create change. And it also becomes a dependency thing because you're dependent on these systems rather than creating change that is sustainable for the people. They're constantly coming back with a new need and needing to be dependent on a system. So, next. Okay, so this presentation, like I said, is usually 2 hours, over 2 hours long if Michael's giving it. And so these are the 6 community assets. I'm going to go through each one. This is really how you can break down your assets. If you want to do a community asset map, you can kind of break it down into these categories. So first is individuals. Individuals really are the most important asset. Individuals make up every part of every story. Every asset functions by individuals. Individuals have gifts, and that's how you really pull individuals in, is by focusing on their gifts. So typically when we have this, we focus on the gifts of the head, gifts of the hand, and gifts of the heart. And it's an activity that we do. So with the gifts of the head, it's really about the things that you know and feel comfortable talking about. So that could be art, history. I love history. You walk up to me and start talking about Black history, we can conversate all day. And then if you give me a task around Black history, research or something, I'm going to be willing to do it always. Then you have the gifts of the hand. These are things or skills that you know and that you are willing to share. Are you good at gardening? Are you good at cooking? You know, so when you're pulling people in, if they like to garden, maybe their task is to work in the garden, and the garden might give out food to the community. So then we have gifts of the heart. And these are things that you care deeply about: education, children, things that you are passionate about that you will do work behind. Um, Next, we have associations. Associations are really multiple people coming together for a cause, usually some sort of shared interest. You are putting multiple people's gifts together, the things that they enjoy, to really reach a goal. Association, go ahead. Oh, okay. Associations can be neighborhood associations, it can be neighborhood groups, it can be neighborhood clubs. Most of the time, you do not see paid people in these associations, but sometimes they can become so strong and have such a good capacity that they are able to pay some of their members. Every association does some sort of creating a vision and then creating a process to reach that vision. Next is institutions. This is our third asset. Institutions provide resources to the communities that they exist in and that are around them. Usually, members are paid within institutions, and there are three kinds of institutions. You have for profit, not for profit, and governmental. Some examples of institutions would be the schools in your community, the libraries in your community, the health centers, the different health services, the neighborhood places, the parks. Those are the types of institutions that you typically see in neighborhoods. And those are typically the spaces that provide some sort of resource for the people in the neighborhood and people directly around the neighborhood. Um, Next is physical space, our fourth asset. So physical space is really the land and really everything on it. Vacant land is also an asset. Vacant land you can do anything with. You can build something up on it for the community. You can start a garden for the community. Climate itself is an asset in a physical space, because if you have climate that is good for gardening all year round, then you're able to garden all year round and provide food to your neighbors all year round. So even that's an asset. Some examples of physical space, physical assets are land, property, buildings, and even the transportation in your neighborhood. Our fifth asset is exchange. To me, this is one of the most important assets because it brings neighbors together, it brings neighbor connections, and it really can start relationship building. So in neighborhoods, exchange might look like giving, it might look like trading skills. I can cook and I can garden. I might garden for you and then I might cook for you. It might look like exchanging knowledge, learning different things from each other. And when we are learning from each other, we are building relationships, we are getting to know each other. It could look like buying and selling. And then it could just be look like sharing the gifts that each other already has, or building those gifts together, coming together and building those gifts. Any type of exchange between neighbors, between businesses and residents, between institutions and residents, associations and individuals, any type of exchange is an asset for a community. Our last asset is culture, stories, and history. This one is also very important. So I think it's important to, first off, know your neighborhood, but it's really super important too for people that's coming into your neighborhood to also do this work for you, to know the neighborhood they are working in as well. So you want to look into the history. You want to know the history of change in a neighborhood. You want to know the things that they've done that didn't work. You want to know the things they've done that did work. You want to know the things that has been brought to them that they absolutely hate, so that you don't suggest it again. You want to know stories, and then also it's good to get the neighbors together on sharing culture, stories, and history, because then they build relationships through shared experiences. Maybe the same thing brought them to that neighborhood, and it might be an issue they can tackle together. Knowing the culture of a neighborhood also shows you how to approach a neighborhood, how to exist within a neighborhood. So you want to know the culture, you want to know the stories, you want to know the history. And if you're working in a neighborhood, you should have that passion. So you should automatically want to know the culture, the story, and the history. Next. So all those assets really kind of work together. They all really kind of show up in any success story within a neighborhood. One of those assets show up, or all of them show up. This perspective really kind of shows strong connections and the power that neighborhoods could have if they use their assets in their capacities, and they use their people's gifts and their talents. So some basic findings from ABCD. In every story, neighbors know about the local assets. Successful neighborhood action is the result of assets that were not connected now being connected. And then really, to connect these assets, there must be a connector. This really focuses on how assets build powerful communities and the importance of people or groups that initiate connecting. Like myself, I'm a liaison, so I build capacity, I provide technical assistance, but I'm in very much so a connector. When I first started this job, and but when I wanted it, I looked up liaison, and one of the things is a connector. And it's so much power behind coming into these neighborhoods and being able to connect them, and then them in turn connecting with each other and being able to create that change together, having the same vision, creating a process together. Is all amazing to see. And it all comes from just connecting these different businesses and assets and associations and individuals. Next. So 3 planning questions that we try to push neighborhood associations to kind of use as a guide when they're doing ABCD. So as neighbors, what can we achieve by using our own assets? What can we achieve with our assets if we get outside help, if we bring in a connector, if we bring in a contractor for different things? What can we do with our assets that must be done by outsiders? So we want to make sure that neighborhoods know that it doesn't start with what are our problems and what can we do to fix them, but instead, what is our vision and what assets can we use out of our community to reach this vision? So it's all about mindset change. It's about looking at your community from a different perspective. And we all know how strong the mind is. So starting with this positive and starting with, what does my community already have to offer that can help me get this change done, that can help me sustain change? We want to make sure that we are sustaining the change. We don't want to create change and leave people hanging where they can't sustain it, where they got to keep changing it. We want sustainable change, sustainable, healthy change at that. Next. Some cautions regarding ABCD. And so first, not every community is ready. And you'll see in our full training how to become ready, what that looks like. And if you need guidance, if you want to become ABCD community ready, please reach out to us. We are more than happy and ready to see these communities taking this approach to really develop their neighborhood. Need to be serious about involving everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean young people like me. I am going to start working, and I'm very passionate about getting more people my age, I'm 26, into this work, and passionate about this work. But also that looks like bringing in the renters and the owners in your neighborhood, making sure that you are bringing in everybody. Everybody has gifts. Everybody has different circumstances that put them in a place in life, but they still have gifts. They still have powers. They still have abilities. And everybody needs to be serious about time. ABCD is hard work. Any type of community development is hard work, but this also comes with a mindset change on top of the work. So it's extra work. And we know that a lot of people do this work after work. They are putting their time into their communities. It's free time, but it's a lot of time. So definitely have to be serious and intentional about time. Be able to give people a process and a way to use their gifts, give people tasks, do things that's going to keep people and move with action and not just with words. Next. I'm pretty sure that's the end. Okay, so thank you everybody. That's the end of it. So I'll put my information in the chat because I am a liaison. We do work in different districts, and if you need us, if you want this training, we have a full training that we offer. We have some other trainings that we offer. But even if you need us to come in and start this work with you, if you need to be connected to your council member, if you need resources, please reach out to me and I will connect you with myself, Jamel, or Tajane, who are the other liaisons, and we will collaborate with you on getting this work done. Thank you.
That was really exciting. Thank you so much, Johni. She's one of my folks, and so she made me really proud. Um, um, I was just going to say that she's right. Please call us if you need anything. Something interesting just happened. Somebody who didn't have access to watch this from their home just came here and we let him in and he's watching it on one of our laptops here. So we're here for you if you need some assistance. Yvonne, what do you have to say?
It's very interesting. I enjoyed her presentation. After years and years of doing this work, over 20 some odd years, I see her as the future. And I'm so excited because she is right. More young people have got to get into this work. For about 15 years, we could, across the country, we could count almost on one hand who was doing large scale neighborhood development that were of African American descent. And that was just sad. And so to see young people coming into this work like her and affecting change in their communities and bringing in more young people, this is awesome. Awesome.
So we have another young person up next.
Yes, so
Dr. Monica Unseld.
yes, I'm excited. I'm excited about Monica.
Me too. When I was talking to her this week, we had a little run-through session and everything went perfectly smooth in the run-throughs. That should tell you, you know how when things go perfectly smooth in the run-through, then you have to worry about it in the real show. But anyway, I'm sure she'll be great. But I was just going to say, she was telling us stories about being in the graduate program in biology, and that just kind of freaks me out just thinking about it. But she's going to talk to us today about how biology, and the things that she knows influences the community. So first we started talking about ourselves, and then Johni took us through the community, and now we have Dr. Unseld that's going to talk about how we can move forward.
Well, I'm just excited because, I've been following Dr. Unseld on social media and in other speaking engagements that she's had. And she is that person, from what I can tell, she not only has that formal education, but she also is an activist and advocate. And what I love about her is that she can speak from the street to the boardroom. And she doesn't mince words. She's very authentic in what she says. And so she didn't know I was a fan. So I'm just excited to hear from her this morning. I think our audience is going to love this message. And I hope people really figure out ways to tap into what she's saying to be a strong conduit for change in the ways that she recommends.
Thank you all. I'm going to share my screen, but I will tell you, they said they wanted me to speak because I'll say what needed to be said. Well, first, let me back up and say I really encourage you all to participate in the ABCD training. If I were still a college professor, I would assign that as your homework because I think that's some really valuable work that we all need to think about as we move on post-COVID and post the demonstrations and the uprising. presentation today, I'm going to talk about something called the Hermes principles for community organizing. I know we're not doing community organizing work here, but the principles are something that can be applied across different sectors. And just fair warning, we're going to dismantle some things before we build back up. So, you know, as they said, the flight attendant, we're about to depart from the gate. Make sure your seatbelts are fastened. Make sure your, belongings are stowed and you know where the oxygen is. Because I think I have at least one slide that might be a wrecking ball, but we've got to break it down before we can build it back up. So here we go. Oh, wait. Okay. So I like this quote because after 2020, we need to notice that the dance is changing. The song has changed. The traditional ways that we interact with each other, the traditional power dynamics are no longer in play. So we're all kind of navigating this together. And the key word is together. Okay, so we're trying to make up these new steps so that everyone can have justice. All right, so here we go. I want you to look at these next 3 slides. I want to make sure that you read them carefully because your first reaction, you may be reacting to something the slide's not saying. All right, so look, their feelings are going to get hurt. I'll just give you some time to read it. And remember, make sure you're reacting to what it's actually saying. Does everyone see what we're saying here? We're not saying white feelings are not important. We're saying it's cruel for you to expect us to prioritize them. If you really saw Black and brown people in marginalized groups as fully human, if you really understood that we are trying to survive a genocide every day, if you really understood the historical trauma and the current trauma that we wake up to every morning, you would not even expect us to stop to make sure you're okay. Especially when you all are not asking us if we are okay. We are rehashing our trauma in an attempt to educate you. And instead of saying, hey, how you doing? I know that had to be rough. It's like, I'm hurting. Can you just, don't you see that I'm trying? Like we have to stop. And that's a holdover from slavery. It really is. And it's something that we've got to let go. We're not on the plantation anymore, okay? All right, so the Hermes principles for democratic organizing, these were created by people of color because traditional organizing is top-down, white savior, white led. They come into the communities, they tell communities what to do, and the Hermes principles will say, no, 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 we're not doing that anymore. And there's a link there that I think Noelle will put in the chat if you're interested in learning more about them. So again, I know we're not doing organizing work here, but the principles can be applied to any work, especially when you're looking at community engagement. All right, so here are just some highlights. So if we look at Louisville, Louisville is still a plantation, right? We even put that plantation on display as part of the Derby Festival, right? Or just that Southern antebellum charm that brings in tourist dollars. But we also have a history of secrecy, right? That sign that went up at the Kroger over Derby weekend. There were so many rumors that spread so quickly because this is a city of secrets. Nobody's really open. We don't have transparency. This is a city of saviors. This is a city of people wanting to maintain that charity model where the giver is the good person and the other one is the beggar and they're lazy and they need help. But what we really need is justice, not charity. And so I always say, like, I started a nonprofit, but my goal is for me to be able to one day shut down my nonprofit because it's no longer necessary. And I think that needs to be where we're shifting. It's not about a business model to keep our charity in business. It's about a just society. So here's the short video. And this is just, we're going to dismantle about how did we get here into this white savior power dynamic? How did we get here?
So there's some people out there getting upset whenever we say Black labor built this country, but we're not making anything up, guys. These are facts, and we're about to present you with the historical receipts. In case you missed it, this is what we mean when we say we built this. History lesson for y'all. The first slaves were brought to the U.S. in 1619. Their job was simple: to make white settlers money. Slaves grew tobacco, rice, and indigo on the plantations of the southern coast. Now, fast forward to the late 18th century, cotton was king, and the U.S. was making stacks of cash on it, especially with all that free labor. Over 600 million, or just about half of the country's economic activity in 1836, came directly or indirectly from cotton. Cotton-producing slaves were just 6% of the population, but created almost half of 1 year's economic activity. We spoke with Professor Edward Baptist, the author of The Half Has Never Been Told.
That 6% figure is specifically the enslaved Africans and African Americans who were in the cotton-producing region. We're looking at like South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana.
Talk about being critical to a nation's economy.
I guess you can imagine some sort of science fiction world where this didn't happen, but this is what did happen. Slave labor built the U.S.
And their contributions weren't limited to the South. A little bit north in D.C., there's the White House. We built that.
I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves.
If you doubt our forever First Lady's words, the White House Historical Association spells it out pretty plainly. Planners turned to African Americans, both enslaved and free, to provide the bulk of the labor that built the White House, the United States Capitol, and other early government buildings. This country's financial center, we built that too. Wall Street earned its name because enslaved Africans built a wall to protect Dutch settlers from raids in 1653. This wall ran from river to river. Slaves built the roads, the docks, and most of the big-time buildings in the area that would soon become New York City. And railroads, slaves did that. North America's 4 major rail networks all own lines that were built and operated with slave labor. Before the Civil War, nearly every rail line east of the Mississippi River and south of the Mason-Dixon line was constructed or run at least partly by slaves. You know what else we built? What about that great American music genre? Yes, rock and roll. We built that too. And blues, and jazz, and hip hop, and pop. America's favorite snack food, that was a black guy behind the potato chip. The ironing board, a sister. The traffic light, yep, he was black. Super soaker, that was a dude named Lonnie. He's black too. And the person who invented the technology responsible for the caller ID and call waiting, her name is Dr. Shirley Jackson. And yes, she's black. Clearly, there isn't enough time to go through all the ways Black people have built this country. They're vast. Don't get it twisted. Native American and many immigrant communities have made tremendous contributions to the infrastructure, identity, and imagination of the U.S. as well. So when we say we built this country, we actually mean it.
Okay, so I just want to sort of wrap that up. So I'm a Black woman. I have 3 degrees, and people act like I'm the first person of my family, the first generation to be intelligent. No. My ancestors were just as intelligent. You do not survive these oppressive systems by accident. It takes intelligence, it takes skill, it takes talent, it takes knowledge, it takes all of those things that you think we don't have. So this is just, again, right now we're just dismantling. So we learn in history class that the Europeans discovered so many things. Here's what Europeans actually discovered. Some minor uninhabited islands. You cannot discover something where people are already there. So this is just also from the same axis or page, the Decolonial Atlas. So it's, I like the second paragraph. All sarcasm aside, it's worth remembering that almost everywhere Europeans went, they were met by existing inhabitants. And these were not inhabitants that needed to be civilized. These were inhabitants that had kept their civilization going for millennia. And they had technology and things that we don't want to credit them with. So again, we're still stripping down. We've all been indoctrinated with this. White people, people of color, some people of color have even internalized this of white heroes. We see that in the charity model, right? The white people are going to come in and save the concept of what is civilization. So we look at the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, but really, if the Moors from Africa had not saved the people in Europe from banning all of those text from ancient times, there would not have been a Renaissance. So Black people led to the Renaissance. So we also have written versus oral histories. Black and brown communities, we often have oral histories, but white people just, where they wrote theirs down, and then we decided that written is king, and so we're going to go with that. And all of this is with an agenda. It's an agenda to make one group seem superior to the others. So this is kind of like my wrecking ball slide. Just because white people couldn't do it doesn't mean it was aliens. And that's what we do, right? So we have all these, the History Channel does this. And it's even the fact that people don't want to, they don't want to talk about the fact that the nation of Egypt is on the continent of Africa. So when we talk about the civilization of ancient Egypt, we move it off the continent of Africa because we just don't want to believe that people with melanin were capable of doing that. So this is the subconscious elephant in the room when we approach these communities. You don't think we can do it. Again, I have 3 degrees. I've had white people try to assist me with some of the most mundane tasks, and I'm thinking, really? Some of them have even tried to tell me how, like, what it means to be Black. And I'm like, no, girl, we're not doing this. So you think we're less intelligent. Again, this is subconscious. We're all indoctrinated with this. And again, some Black and brown people have internalized this. And that is a discussion that white people do not need to enter into, because when you do, you usually do it to exploit us. But we'll get to that later. So I'm going to challenge you to question your assessment of things. That takes some internal work. Challenge the fact that your experience in the world is not everyone else's. The white experience is not the norm. I think some people thought that 400 and 500 years into this, that Black and brown populations and cultures have completely assimilated, and we have not. So just challenge that assumption that your understanding of things may not be the way others understand it. And we have a right to understand it differently, and be willing to learn. And we'll talk about how some of people aren't willing to learn and some of the dangers of not being willing to learn. All right, so this is the slide about the French Revolution. So in school, they teach us that the French Revolution is about some French people. They were upset because they couldn't get bread, and they got way overreactive and just went out of pocket and started chopping heads off. They did not talk about the wealth hoarding, the resource hoarding, and the cruelty of the ruling class, where you have a population that's starving to death and watching their kids starve to death, that they felt the best option was violence. You see, so we were indoctrinated like, oh my gosh, why were they getting so upset over bread? And it's like, no, they were dying. They were trying to survive. And the ruling class they were up in Versailles having a good time and not wanting to share their power, not wanting to share their resources, not wanting to share their wealth. And then we see what happens. Things got bloody. So we just want to shift how we interpret things. So these are the Hermes principles for democratic organizing. And again, I know this isn't organizing, but these principles can be used in many places. So we're going to go through each of these steps. So I'll give you one slide that gives some information, and then we're going to start talking about ideas and suggestions. So we're going to try to build back up. Now, this is the building back up part of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Principle number 1, be inclusive. Some of y'all think y'all are slick. You put out those Black Lives Matter statements, you hire people of color for your diversity positions, and then all we do is look at your webpage and that's what we see. You say you're committed to diversity. And when we see that, it's like, oh, you may be committed to having us in the room. You're not committing to sharing that power with us. You just want us there to tick off a little box. So this is beyond invitations. This is power transfers. This is no tokens. This is being intentional from the conception of the idea. Like, we are intentionally going to recruit people of color and people from marginalized communities. And we're not going to put it all on the shoulders of our marginalized employees to go find them. It may involve conflict, because some people are like, well, they don't want that attention. But just remember, Black and brown people, that's all we've ever known. We've never known a safe America. I don't know what it means to feel safe in America. I've been in a genocide my entire life. And this one, who is being asked to compromise? Often, I've been told that we need to meet white people where they are. Why? Why can't you meet us? Why do we have to tone it down? Why do we have to scale back? Why do we have to prioritize your comfort when we are dying? So I want you to think about that in your organizations. If you're asking marginalized groups to meet you where you are because you are not willing to move. So this requires you to be humble and to decenter yourself. So being inclusive means all of these things. All right. So Louisville is a data city. We have a lot of data. A lot of it people don't care about because it's questions asked by corporations or the government, right? And often when we go into meetings and we do the introductions, I hear white people, they start off just saying, I'm so proud that we started this program and we started this initiative. And within 30 seconds, I can tell whether or not they talk to the community about it. And most times they have not. So you're patting yourselves on the back for things that the community didn't ask for because you didn't bother to ask. Because again, that plantation, you thought you knew best, right? So make sure when you're being inclusive, don't bring someone in to just reaffirm what you already believe. Bring someone in who's going to challenge you. Bring someone in who's going to say, actually, that's not the question that we have. That's not the problem here. You know, this is actually what's going on, not what you think it is. Find new people of color. I love y'all, but I see some of y'all in every meeting. And there's more Black and brown people and people in marginalized communities in Louisville. But we can tell that you've gotten used to certain voices. And it's time to start inviting people that aren't on the friendly list. And be prepared to pay, just like you would a consultant. You're asking us for our intellectual labor, our emotional labor, our mental labor, and you're asking us to do it without paying. But you're willing to pay a large research firm or a consultant firm to study Black people, but you won't pay Black people to say, hey, this is what's going on. So I like this little image at the bottom, and this goes for Black and brown people and all marginalized people. We are doing you a favor by letting you in because we have every reason to not trust you. We actually do have a reason to burn it all down, but we haven't. You guys should be honored. Like, what's the tweet that's like, we're not looking for revenge, we're looking for respect and recognition, okay? The emphasis on bottom-up organizing. This community loves to have a press release and a press conference. It's like, we're responding to this. And then you just want the community to say, oh, thanks. Because you go in there with an attitude of, you're welcome. Just like when they're doing the invitations and white people are like, well, we started this new initiative. And I can know that like, actually, no one in the community asked you to do that. Stop closing ranks. If you see two big corporations pull their money to start a new diversity initiative, we know that you're really just consolidating power and you're trying to keep control over who has the money. You're just partnering. I call those country club partnerships, country club ideas. People are like, oh, we can do this and have a press release and we'll say it's about diversity. But we know you really didn't want us involved. It's just more ways for you to control the power and the money. So this is relationship building. You know, I think project management is great, but I also think it's one of the worst things that can happen when building community relationships, because it's just a completely different style of looking at the world. So you've got to be really careful before, you know, if you got project managers, you might have to say like, step back a little bit and we'll bring someone else to do this work. You need to be willing to adjust. Again, why should we have to meet you where you are? We're dying. Like, we literally are dying. Why do we have to make sure you're comfortable and trust? What the white community thinks is successful may not be what we think is successful. So just be willing to accept, again, that your worldview may not be universal. All right. So there's a lot of things in these cities. There's a lot of organizations that residents are like, they are not helping, but they still keep getting money. And we keep telling you that's not what we need, but you keep funding those initiatives. Why? And then why do you get upset when we get upset when we're telling you? We've been telling you for decades they are not helping. In fact, they're hurting us. Some of these organizations are straight up causing harm. And you're not listening to us when we're telling you that, because these are your, you know, you've been funding them for decades. You've been working with them and partnering with them for decades. Also, when you're going into these communities to speak, take their suggestions, but don't steal their ideas. We do see that. We see our ideas wrapped up in different packaging, and that is creating more trauma for us. So again, we're in a genocide, we're dying, we're supposed to make sure you're comfortable, and then you're going to steal our ideas. Look at what you're doing to us. Just think about that. The fact, if you really think that's okay, I want you to take some time later today or this weekend to really think about that. If you think that that's an okay relationship to have with the community. And then, and the last part, move. Because some of these things we've been talking about for decades, we've got enough data. Why aren't you doing something about it? This one, let people speak for themselves. Again, you do not survive oppressive systems with luck. You have to be intelligent. And even in terms of like academic intelligence, there are some neighbors who live around Rubbertown that could school all of us on the chemicals that are being emitted there. Never assume someone could not get a PhD. It's about opportunity, okay? So I never assume that someone is not more intelligent than you expect them to be. You need to define roles and responsibilities. Are you bringing us in to be a token? Or are you really willing to step back or step aside for the bigger purpose? Are you willing to feel that tension? Are you willing to not center yourself? Are you willing to pass the mic? And don't just put us up there, you know, when the cameras are on to say, oh, this company is, you know, friendly to Black people. No, like internally, do your employees feel safe? And then when you're in these communities, will you let them lead and speak for themselves? Because they know what's going on. They also know the solutions. In bold, ask better questions. The example I always give is like with healthcare. People think of access and they think about transportation and building more healthcare centers. They don't talk about the fact that doctors don't believe people of color, or that for the longest time, med schools were teaching that people of color do not feel pain, or that, you know, there may be language barriers or cultural differences, religious differences. No one thinks about that, but we're spending millions of dollars trying to get another road built or just trying to build another clinic when there's other issues. So we're making decisions based on incomplete data. Now, power dynamics, we'll go into this a little bit more. So I'm a biologist. I did study some animal behavior. And there are times when white organizations want to preen and show off their antlers to say like, I'm the dominant one. And you think that we're not intelligent enough to notice that. And it's dangerous because you will use that power dynamic to keep us in place. So that's some Jim Crow slavery, those are holdovers from those. So examples, well, if you're not friendly, then we don't have to meet with you. So we have to play nice for access. Why? You're the ones killing us. Why do we have to be nice for you to have a meeting with us? You center yourself and you take up all the oxygen. I've been in meetings where I could not get half a sentence out before I was interrupted. And this is particularly an issue, I'm going to say it with white women. Sometimes you just suck up all the air and you center yourself. And that's very dangerous. And it's really, I'm just going to say it, it's sick, because you know that power dynamic is that you could lead to the Black or brown person not only losing their job, but losing their life. And the fact that that is a go-to, it's frightening that you're willing to risk our lives so that you can center yourself and be the victim. And I often say, like, are white people, are you the supreme race or are you the victim? Pick. What do you want us to do here? Like, how do you want us to interact with you? Because we're just trying to figure out, we're trying to survive, right? All right. Listen, be willing to be uncomfortable, and please do not demand that we make you comfortable. Again, especially if we are having to rehash our trauma over and over and over again. It hurts. It really, really hurts. And it's a pain that you can't, because some people will say, well, I'm going through a stressful time too. I'm thinking, I can guarantee it does not compare. I can guarantee it does not compare to what it is to think that I'm having to protest the same things my grandparents did. And that when I was born, this is not the world they wanted for me. They thought it would be over, that things would be better by now. So the last thing, is this about justice or your feelings? So when you go into these communities and people, they will see you as a representative of an oppressive system. And that first meeting may be rough. They may take out all of their frustrations on you. You cannot get defensive because you have to realize that it's not you personally. It's the fact that you represent the system to them. And to them, this feels like this is my only chance to get it out. Because in our society, we really don't have a lot of healing circles or spaces for people to process emotions. And we'll talk about that later. So when you go in there, just remember, this is about justice, not my feelings. Do not center yourself. I'm not saying your feelings are not important. I'm saying do not ask people to care and prioritize your feelings when we are just trying to survive. All right. So again, to the antlers. All right, professionalism standards, racist and misogynistic. So let's stop with that. All right, so when you're in a meeting, people want to throw out, oh, you're not professional. You know, you're trying to assert your dominance. All right, so just think about what we consider to be professional behavior. It's based in white supremacy and patriarchy. It's that sense of quantity over quality. So people are like, well, we need to get this out. This is the deadline. And I've asked, and I said, why is that the deadline? Why should it be the deadline? If we are trying to just feed our community and keep our community alive, why should we stop all of that for your deadline? I think you guys don't see how busy we are and what it takes to survive in this oppressive society. So yes, some deadlines are legitimate. Like sometimes you do have a hard deadline. There are a lot of deadlines in the city that are completely arbitrary. And you're expecting these communities that are dealing with trauma to just drop everything to focus on your deadline. That's a holdover from the plantation and Jim Crow culture. So we're going to get rid of this plantation. So when you go into these communities, think about it. Before you go in there, have an internal meeting. If we have a deadline, why is it? And can you be flexible? So again, just some advice to build back up. Think about your deadlines. Think about my hairstyle. This is my natural hair. People like to touch it. I don't like that. But I couldn't get hired in some places because this is my hairstyle. I would be required to use toxic chemical straighteners, you know, or how many of us people of color, we code switch. Do you know what that means? You know, like I'm speaking professional now, I'm speaking like Dr. Unseld, but after this, I'm like, girl, I know he didn't do that. You know, I have this different way that I speak when I'm around my friends, but I have to code switch so that I can be taken seriously in these environments. We shouldn't have to do that. And that even applies in the rural area, right? Like how many people from rural areas have to also code switch because we have decided that this form of English is the best, when really it's not. All right, we're going to continue. Let people speak for themselves. We're giving suggestions, we're giving ideas of how to build back up. Now that we've realized that we've been indoctrinated with lies, we're going to have some ideas to build back up. So the lack of emotions. So my actual doctorate is in behavioral neural endocrinology. So it's endocrine disruption and environmental signaling, but specifically behavioral neural endocrinology. So I study behavior in the brain. Oh, this makes me, I don't know if I want to scream or laugh when people throw out the don't be emotional thing. It doesn't work like that. Like that Geico commercial, like this isn't how it works. That's not how any of this works. Like the brain has to process emotions. So when someone says you're being emotional, they're trying to show off their antlers. So that's a form of oppression. And again, they are asking us to not be emotional while at the same time asking us to protect their feelings. You see the hypocrisy there? So when you're in these meetings, and again, that first meeting may be rough, where you'll see a lot of emotion, just know that it's got to get out somewhere because we don't have that in our society where people can normally get it out. So when you throw that out there, that is a form of white supremacy and patriarchy. You know, the emotions give us data, and it terrifies me how many decisions are being made in the city with incomplete data. And emotions, you have to process those emotions before you can plan any sort of intervention, program, or policy. Trust the community to know what it needs. Again, never assume someone could not get a PhD. Never assume that. Use Google. Sometimes y'all ask some questions and I'm like, if y'all don't read bell hooks, you know, if y'all don't read, you know, just find the resources are out there, but you want that labor from us. And you're not going to pay it. The bottom one is a big one. If the white community does not need to be a monolith, neither do we. So this is what happens a lot. Black and brown people will say, we don't want you to do this. And then white people will say, but I know Black and brown people who are okay with it. But I know Black and brown people who don't think I'm racist, and all of that. And you just use that as a way to exploit and invalidate. But you don't split up the white community that way. You don't. So like if a poll says 40% of white people are unhappy, things move. But for Black and brown people, we have to have consensus. That's not fair. So when you go into these communities, listen to everyone, but don't use that tool to silence us that, well, I know other people that don't agree with you. That's a tool of oppression. So again, we're building up, getting ideas on how to do better, okay? So back to emotion. Again, like it's just not how any of this works. It's one of the most ridiculous things that I've heard in meetings, and it is all about showing off your antler size. That's all it is, because you're like, you're too dear and you're ready to fight. But the dance is changing. Remember the first slide? The dance is changing. We're tired of that, you know, David and Goliath stuff. We're tired. And I think white people are tired of that too. We're tired of fighting because we may have a lot of things in common. So you can't leave emotion out of it. And leaving an emotion out of it is not professional. You have to process those emotions. And I like what this slide says. Critical thinkers don't ignore or deny emotions. They accept and manage them. So if you're asking someone to suppress their emotions, you're asking them to not use their brain properly. Okay. So think about that. All right. The fourth principle is working together in solidarity and mutuality. That doesn't mean we have to agree on everything all the time. So you have coalitions. We come together when we need to, and when we don't need to be together, we stay in our own lanes. And sometimes you do have your lane, because I think sometimes everyone wants to be in every lane. No, some people are better at some things, and that's okay, right? You come together when you need to push, and then you can separate and go about your day. Make space for everyone. And this in bold, when in everything you do, whether it's organization, whether it's government, anything, make sure there's justice, power sharing, resource redistribution. So that means move that money around, and equity in all programs and policy. And I mean all, everything. If you're looking to hire someone else, this should be in there. If you're looking to negotiate a contract with the city, this should be in there. If you're working to give someone a loan, this should be in here, in everything. Avoid silos, think holistically. Life doesn't happen in silos. You can't separate education from health in real life. So why are we doing that? Again, we're making decisions on this and we're spending money on this and it's not working. And the last one, the power dynamics are changing. We know we should not have to beg. We know the burden is on those who have traditionally thrived off of our oppression. The burden is on you all to get it right. And with social media, let's say a meeting does go badly, it's going to get on social media. And with national, I don't know if you guys have heard of Black Twitter, but some of y'all should be very afraid because Louisville is under microscope, and there are some things going around in other cities where they're looking at Louisville, finding out who donated to who and who's doing this. So you need to be careful. The power dynamics are changing. So, just relax your, just, you don't have to preen and pounce with your antlers anymore. That's not what we want. That's not what we need. All right, and be honest. All right. Sometimes you just like doing things, right? So like if you went to church and there were like certain sins, there might be a sin that you like doing and you don't want to give it up, right? But some of these organizations, some of these individuals like their privilege, they like their power, and some of them are racist. But here's the thing, if you are, just tell us. Don't try to engage us in all of these discussions because you're just wasting time. If you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to meet us where we are, just tell us up front so we can move on because we have lives to save. So what are you willing to change? What are you willing to lose? Are you willing to lose money? Are you willing to lose power? Are you willing to lose influence? Are you willing to lose some of your traditional audience in order for justice? So that means you've got to get rid of the racist. Are you willing to do that? I think we need to think about that. All right, just relationships amongst ourselves. I cannot stress this just enough. It's relationships, not outcomes. We are not projects to be managed. Again, you've got to see us as fully human. So this is at the individual and organizational level. So if one-on-one individual conversations are going left, then we got to watch that. But if the organization is also going left, we have to watch that as well. And just remember, we're in a genocide. So we're kind of busy. So you need to be careful if you're demanding. Again, we need to play nice. You need to make sure there's no tension. You need to stay in your place, boy. That sort of thing. Don't rock the boat, because last summer, Black women literally kept this city from burning to the ground. How many were thanked versus how many were called mean? And you need to think about that. You need to appreciate. So we're often asked to stop and give you your ally flowers while we get called mean and we're attacked and tone policed. So I like this quote: individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. So yes, a lot of these suggestions are challenging, but I tell you, if you feel that tension within, you're being called to do better. And I always believe that if you're being called, then you're capable. You're not going to get called if you're not capable of doing it. So if you feel that tension, embrace it, because that means you deep down, you want to do better. Okay. All right. Don't take things personally if they're not personal. I think every Black and brown person on this call has had a story of being retaliated against, of being targeted, of being attacked for calling out racism, especially in the workplace. And here's the thing, if you take it personally, it may be because you are more entrenched in the racist and oppressive systems than you have led yourself to believe. If you cannot separate yourself from the racist behaviors and systems and institutions, then you have internalized it. Because I can assure you, when we are calling out racism, we're not thinking, oh, I'm going to take her down. We're thinking, I want to stop hurting. That's what we're saying. We want the pain to stop. And sometimes you all take it personally and things just get messy. And again, you're relying on that power dynamic that we're going to be the ones to lose our jobs, or even worse, we're going to be the ones that lose our lives over it. And I have the question, how many will die? So while we are meeting you where you are, while we are making sure your feelings are not hurt, while we are learning to play nice and to make sure we don't show emotions and we meet your deadlines, how many of us will die? So that needs to be something that you think about. How many of us are dying? Because a lot of times the very people, the very organizations that uphold these systems, that created and designed these systems, now are saying they are trapped by these systems and there's nothing they can do to fix it. And you wonder why we don't believe you, because we've been managing it. We've been scrapping and scraping along and making do with pieces and leftovers for centuries. So if we can figure out a different way to approach a solution, maybe you can too. So these are just relationships, the relationships that don't require us to wait for you, that don't require us to center you. So it's trust and safety. You can bring us into the meeting, you can bring us into the boardroom, but if we don't feel safe once we're there, it's not going to work. And we do talk, and word will get out that, yo, this is what happened to me when I was in this meeting. So just know we need to feel safe. Commitment to self-transformation. This is actually my favorite part of the Hermes principles, because it's at the individual and community level, right? We are always learning. You always have to move. So prior to COVID, a lot of us, you know, community organizers, advocates, activists, nonprofits, we thought we were doing a great job. We knew there were some gaps and we could do better, but we thought overall it wasn't too bad. We're managing. COVID exposed a lot of gaps that we didn't know even existed. And we all had to go back and go, whoa. And then the demonstrations and the uprisings, we have to address that now too. So internally, how can you continue to learn and grow? And I challenge you, when you bring people into these meetings, bring in someone who's not going to agree with you. If you want to look at a capitalist structure for, you know, making the community better, talk to a communist and ask them why they have decided to be a communist. You might learn some things. Even if you don't agree, you may learn some things as to, like, well, this is the issue I have with capitalism because it's done this, 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 and this. And maybe those are things you can possibly work on to improve. But we're so into I just want to hear people that agree with me, that we're not willing to commit to self-transformation. And when you're building just relationships with people, those relationships will change over time. Right? So they'll evolve, and the community needs will evolve, and what, the culture says, this is what we're feeling right now. We have to be willing to move together. This is a new dance. We're just moving across the dance floor. And at the bottom, I put an arrow there. We always want to go to peace, but we always want to skip over justice. So if I hear people like, why can't we just go back to a time when people were nice? And I'm like, when was that? As a Black person, I don't know any time in history where things were nice. So we cannot skip justice and expect peace. We cannot just continue to throw money in the pressure cooker and think it's going to get better. We have to release the pressure. Then we can work towards peace. All right, so here are some questions I want you to think about for your organization and for yourself. Is your work driven by social pressure or a real desire for justice? Social justice is so trendy right now. And there's been a lot of frustration with Black and Brown-led nonprofits to see white-led nonprofits move into this justice space and get money, while these Black and Brown-led nonprofits have been doing the work for decades. So why are you doing this work? And if you're thinking about doing this work, who are the Black and Brown organizations that are already doing it? And just think about supporting them instead of starting your own. Another one, because justice work is brutal. It's painful. Where is the joy in it for you? What ignites your passion? What makes you interested? You have to hold on to that, because there are days I don't want to check my email because I know it's going to be about people being poisoned. So you have to remember, where is the joy? Where do you feel your passion? Where do you feel your power? And then how can you use that for good? And then I want to leave you with, what's your next move? So I'll end with this slide. I have a nonprofit called Until Justice Data Partners, and this quote pretty much sums up what we're about. We can't change it until we face it. So with that, thank you for having me. I hope I didn't go too quickly. I know we had a lot. If you want the slides, I will make them available. But if you have questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
I'm on fire, girl.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. She did run a little extra, and we have Lettie coming up next. So I hope everybody can stay and listen to what Lettie's gonna say. Her presentation is about 15 to 20 minutes. So please, if you can stay a little after 11, I'd appreciate it. I just couldn't stop Dr. Unseld. She was so good. I was like, how can I stop her in the middle of her presentation?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
About 5 extra minutes. But anyway, Yvonne, where you at?
Right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry, it bumped me off. I had to come back in.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that was awesome, Dr. Unseld. As usual, you delivered. Oh my goodness. We gotta apply. We gotta figure out how to apply and be intentional.
That's right. And
Be
work from the ground up. You know, we talk about that
intentional.
at Center for Neighborhoods all the time. And I love hearing it outside of us that we have to talk to the people to figure out
Yeah.
what they want. But anyway, I don't want to take up any more time. You go ahead and introduce your friend Lettie that you just introduced me to.
Well, you know, without further ado, we are introducing, I like to call her Dr. Lettie Johnson. Uh, just a wealth of knowledge. She is Louisville native and just knows all of the inner workings of the community. She encourages so many of us to not be fearful in our work and in our good doing. And she is all about making sure that the community is involved in its own transformation and is leading in that. She coaches, she's a keynote speaker, she aids organizations in the specific need around knowledge and competency, and she's helping people to apply that. She is a servant leader, and that's what I love about Lettie Johnson. So without further ado, Miss Lettie Johnson.
Well, listen, first of all, Monica, I love me some Monica. I am absolutely honored and just privileged to have been able to be here in this space to hear Monica. Give her some love, some hearts. She said, if you only knew how brave it takes to be able to speak and stand in your truth, right? And so, Monica, hats off to you. Melanie and Yvonne, thank you so much for having me. I will not be long. Monica has already made the business case. So some of the slides that I was even going to cover, I don't even have to worry about because Monica has said it. My job here is to coach you up and to get you into the transformation space so that you will be able to take immediate action. If you know me, you know I have a lot of energy and I am a challenger and a disruptor of thoughts and behavior. My goal is to move you into action. And so because Monica has done a fabulous job of getting us into that space, I am going to bring my presentation up and I'm going to move rather quickly and I'll figure out a way because this is what I do every day. My material obviously is preparatory. So I'm going to find a way to be able to share with you all as much information. So Melanie, it may take me a day or so to get the slides where I could be able to share, but I want to be able to send them some action items. And I've already sent an emotional intelligence quick 15 questions, 12 to 15 questions in terms of so that you can monitor and figure out where you are emotionally in this journey, right? Journey of transformation. And so let me jump right into my few words that I just want to add to the conversation. Can everyone see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, I got Monica shaking her head. Excellent. So again, you know, I am about trying to help you to take this on as an individual, and then we'll move into a collective. Monica's already talked about what it means, what it looks like in terms of collective action, but I want to spend time talking about you, how you will heal so that you can help to change our community. So I want you to take a quick second. This is going to be interactive, okay? And so what I want you to do is I want you to repeat after me, and you don't have to unmute yourself, but I want you to hear yourself. I want you to say, I am here to change my world. Say that. I am here to change my world. I am here to change my world. Excellent. My goal, I've already stated, I'm here to add a little value to the conversation, right? I am going to be challenging your thinking, your beliefs, and your values. And so I want us to take action towards healing as an individual so that we can move into community collectively. Again, Monica made the business case. Root cause is what? Racism. Bottom line, whether it is the social determinants of health, social and racial injustice and inequities, housing, healthcare, education, income, wealth gaps. Monica's covered. Let's keep going. Now, what I want you to do, I want you to take a moment and I want you to breathe. Just take a moment and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And just take a moment and just rest. Now, if you do not have a piece of paper and an ink pen, grab one because you're going to need it. We're going to go to work, okay? Transformation does not happen overnight. It is intentional. And so we're going to do some active work here this morning for the next few minutes, okay? So the first question that I have for you is, have you taken the moment to pause, process your emotions, the societal shifts and trends and events, such as Monica has painted for us today? Yes or no? Right? Yes or no? The next question is, what emotions have you experienced over the course of the last year? Take inventory. I have provided for you an emotional wheel. Jot down, take the next 60 seconds, jot down what those emotions are. Last question. What behaviors have you expressed and modeled during these times? What behaviors have you expressed and modeled during these times? Take a moment, review your answers, starting with the first one. Have I paused to reflect? Yes or no? What emotions have you experienced? And lastly, what behaviors have you expressed during these times? Take a deep breath in, deep breath out, deep breath in, deep breath out. Relax for a moment. Take a moment, close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Take a deep breath in and just listen to my voice. We are human beings having a spiritual experience. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm gonna say that again because I jacked it up. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Take a moment and think about your emotions. What you've heard, learned, seen today, process that. Take a deep breath in, deep breath out, deep breath in, deep breath out. Last time, take a deep breath in, slow deep breath out, and rest. And when you feel comfortable, go ahead and open your eyes. So what I want to do is I want to dive into talking a little bit about let me say this, 4 people who have just really impacted my work and my lens when we talk about injustices, when we talk about how do we move into a space of ownership, right? Which is authors William Sandy Darity and Kristen Mullen, as well as Gary Cunningham, as well as Dietrich Muhammad, right? These prolific justice leaders have really had a just a intentional way of framing really what it means to move from equity into justice and then into liberation. And we individually play a role into that. And so what I want to present to you, I want to offer you the opportunity to purchase this book. I'm going to talk briefly about the framework in which Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen that they have presented when we talk about reparations, right? And so they have came from a frame of holistic reparations. And Monica touched on a little bit about what it really means to allow liberation to really exist in the context of our organizations and in the context of our communities. And I really want to spend just a couple of minutes sharing with you really what does it look like when we want to come together so that we can win, okay? And so I want to talk to you briefly about acknowledgement, repair, and then creating access for wealth, right? So when we're talking about from an individual level, we speak to acknowledgement. So that means that we need to admit to the truth, right? Recognize our role. We need to also express appreciation and celebration for that which this country has not framed as the norm, which is white norm, okay? So what I'm saying to you is that we need to express appreciation for difference, okay? Embrace our various ethnicities, embrace our various nationalities, right? Embrace our Black sisters, embrace our brown sisters and brothers. So we really need to do that with intentionality. We also do need public accountability, okay? And then again, we need to celebrate the difference. The second column is really about this framework of repair. And when we talk about repair takes you taking ownership as an individual so that you can then move into community, right? So that we know what we're influencing. And that's the reason why I had you to answer that question. What behaviors have you modeled and influenced during these times, right? Then we need to look at the system, right? We have to dismantle. We have to understand that we have a responsibility to do our healing work on an individual level, but we also have to know that what we do on an individual level, it influences the collective. And so when we talk about repair, we have to also look at the renewal, right? And Monica talked a lot about renewal, but we also have to talk about restitution and reconciliation. We have to, not even reconciliation, conciliation, and then we can reconcile because we've never been reconciled. So we need to really understand what that really means. And then lastly, we got to create access, right? We got to be willing to transfer the power. And specifically, we need to do that from a framework of wealth. We need to close the income and pay gap. We need to look at partnership and investment. How do we help our community thrive? Well, give the Black and brown people, give them the property, give them access to the wealth, give them the land, right? And if you can't give them the land, then create space that we can come together collectively and have some advocacy opportunities. And then lastly, social capital, y'all. It's not hard. This is the most basic framework, and Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen, they do a phenomenal job in that book. outlining what it really means to move into holistic reparations. And I talk about holistic reparations from an individual basis and moving into a collective basis, okay? So quickly, let me keep going. I know, Mel, now I'm on tight time here. So let's jump into, how do I take personal responsibility for healing myself so that I can influence this behavior into our community, okay? And so let's answer this question. First of all, let's talk about what it really means, right, to heal. The only thing that stands between us and where we're trying to be is the opportunity of success, equity, inclusion, justice, and liberation. The goal is liberation. Monica touched on a little bit about put her nonprofit out of business. Absolutely. We got to move from a charity model, right? That's the nonprofit industrial complex that she was speaking of. We've got to move from that. We are no longer in that space. We all should be being put out of business in terms of the community work that we're doing, okay? And it's going to take us to heal on an individual basis so that we can move into a collective basis so people can show up and use their gifts fully, okay? So we got to be willing to heal. And so first of all, when we think about how do we heal through service. We have to serve ourselves, and then we have to serve others so that we can grow, okay? Growth and healing. Those are our two buckets that we need to do our work. And we got to do that through changing our thinking. We got to change the way we think, y'all, because that is what will restrict us. Assumptions we make restrict our thinking before we therefore restrict our possibilities. Okay? We've got to really think about, what does that mean? Assumptions. What assumptions do you have about yourself? What assumptions have you made about specific groups? Right? If we really want to adopt a heal our communities, change my world mindset, you have to have hope and you got to believe in yourself. Okay? And so the call to action is, let's jump into what are 5 things quickly that we can do to heal. The first thing is you need to learn who you are. Ask Monica and anybody else in this room that knows me. The first thing I'm always going to tell you is that understand your personality. I put it up here, right? D's and C's, they're task-oriented. I's and S's, they're people-oriented. We've got to figure out, where do we fit in this mode? It's important for you to understand who you are, what your personality is, how you have communicated, how you are triggered. It is important for you to understand that about you and your personality. Because when you go into these spaces, as Monica has painted, what you will recognize, you will understand your behavioral response and be able to therefore move into a place of management. The other thing is that I'll say, I sent an emotional intelligence quick worksheet. Take the emotional intelligence worksheet. What it will do, it will reveal to you where you are emotionally, where you need to do some additional work. The third thing is, know your values. We have a free assessment on one of our John Maxwell websites. It should be this should be in the chat for you. Go there. Understand what your value system is. Inclusion is a non-negotiable for me. Equity is a non-negotiable for me. Okay, so really understand who you are, understand your personality, understand how you communicate, understand your values, and share your values. If equity and inclusion is a value of yours, right? How do we transform our community? Is that we hold people accountable to that same standard. People know who come around me, absolutely. It's a non-negotiable. We're going to talk about equity. We're going to talk about justice. We're going to talk about liberation. We're going to create systems. We're going to dismantle that which does not serve the greater community, right? And so what I want to introduce to you quickly is a framework so that you'll understand where you are in this process. And so that is our transformational framework. And if you are a pioneer, which means that you could be a visionary, right? You know there's a change, but you don't necessarily know how to get the change done, but you know there's a vision and a change that needs to happen. Then you need to build you a team. Grab you a person who is a champion. Champions are good at planning. Generally, they are our S's when we talk about the DISC management or the DISC personality assessment. Generally, they are the people who can help us with the plan. They're going to champion. They're going to encourage us. Then you want to grab you, once you get your plan, you want to grab you a person of influence who can help you to message a practice of equity and inclusion. Thirdly, you want to understand who around you are hesitators, right? You need some hesitators to be around you. Generally, they are your C's, compliance people, right? They want to know every piece of data. They want to make sure that we understand what the data is, what it means, how it is adaptable to us as an individual, how does it affect the greater plan. You need those people around you. And then lastly, it's the obstructor. And you even need an obstructor. It's about being able to embrace difference. The obstructors often help us to live out our values. They reinforce, they stretch us to grow. It keeps us close to the fire. And that's what we have to do in order to heal. This healing work, it's not just about going to the doctor and getting some medication. This is a continuous journey. It's ongoing, okay? And it's an individual and personal decision that you have to make. Where do you stand in this process, in this journey? Quickly, I'm gonna wrap up with these 4 points. Listen to what your passion is speaking to you. You are not meant to do everything. You're not. Understand what your role is, where you are in the journey, because oftentimes where we think we are causing or we want to be impactful, our intention can be misconstrued. We can cause more harm when we don't acknowledge where we are in the process and in the journey and what our role is and should be. The third thing is invest in your potential, right? You got great practitioners doing this work every day. Monica just talked about, she's a data person. She does all the data. She's looking at the mindset of why we think the way we do, right? She's a scientist. She's brilliant. I have a whole team that supports me from mental health all the way to organizational health. Reach out to us. We are on the front lines doing this work every day. Get you a dream team. Find like-minded folks who can help you with the change that you're seeking to create. It matters because this work is heavy and it is tiring, it's exhausting. And so when you get exhausted, you need people around you who's going to build you up and lift you up so that you can advance the work in spite of. And then lastly, take care of yourself. Have a routinely check in, check out, and check up with yourself. Check in. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Check out completely. Take a break from the work. And then lastly, check up, right? Constantly check up on yourself. Ask those challenging questions of where you are in the journey. This is how we will heal our community. It starts with us individually, and then we can move into the collective. Quick story as I conclude. it takes the intentionality from an individual basis to move us into a collective. And so really there is a principle that I would like to introduce to you called the law of multiplication. What happens is that when we heal and we know our values, we know who we are, we know where we stand, we're being intentional about the work. I'm not telling you anything new that you don't already know. But what happens is when you live out your values, what happens is you're able to mobilize and encourage others to do the healing work with you. That's how we will transform the world. It starts with you. It's an individual, personal decision as to how you will show up and show out, right? And when I mean show out, I mean that literally, right? Because sometimes it takes us to be able to challenge ourselves in a way that we disrupt the behavior and the thought pattern that is happening in the room or in the space or even in community, right? So I wanted to just give you this food for thought that when we are intentional, this is what it could look like. What we have here are 5 leaders from this community, right, who raised their hand and said, I want to change our world. I want to change our community. I want folks to be able to show up fully and embrace. We got education, we got health, we got personnel, we've got athletics represented, we got housing represented, all because I said that I'm willing to heal and change myself so that we could be a better society. You have that same ability. So my challenge to you is really think about how will you change your corner of the world and do it intentionally. With that, I'm gonna close. I'm open to any questions, any thoughts. Let me look at the chat box because I have not been looking. Yes, we must heal. Absolutely.
I was thinking you should open the doors of the church. I feel like I've been to church.
Right.
Today, so Lettie,
That's right.
I'm so pleased that you were here. I hate that some people had to leave, but the people that needed to hear you are right here. This was a wonderful, wonderful morning. Thanks to everyone who came and supported the LCDN. Just in case you don't know what that is, that's the Louisville Community Development Network, and we're a network of the community development corporations in Louisville. And if you're interested in learning more, please contact me. I would love to tell you about it and tell you. And if you want to help us and participate, that would be great. I want to last but not least, I want to thank the committee that really helped us so much. Yvonne is the chair of the training committee, and she's from One West, and Emily Dixon, Alicia, I'm going to mess up her last name, Padrira. I'm sorry, Alicia. She's from Habitat for Humanity, and Jack Treywood, he's from HPI. I just want you to know that we're a group of a bunch of CDCs trying to work together and build our capacity. And that's what this morning was about, building capacity. I feel stronger. I feel encouraged. I feel like I have a mission that all the 4 speakers have set me out on today. And my next mission is to turn this over to Yvonne. Oh, one more thing before I turn it over to her. You're going to get a questionnaire. Please respond. We want to make the next training, I don't know how we can do it, even better than this training. And so your input will help us with that. And Yvonne, is she on?
Come on, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I definitely won't be long. I just want to thank everybody for showing up this morning and for Louisville doing what it does, leaning in, getting educated. I appreciate people staying through the message as long as they were able to. Dr. Unseld, we have got to hear more from you as a community. And I will also say, Lettie, you are on fire. You got to keep energizing us and reminding us how important it is to check in with ourselves and to check our temperature on our emotions, and making sure that our whatever we're feeling, that we are applying it in the right way. And I will also say, at some point, I want to have a conversation with Dr. Johnson on trauma, because she knows a lot of how that plays out. And we've got to discuss that as well. Because one of the things that West Louisvillians tell me often is that when are we going to deal with the history of the trauma so that we can move forward? Because your trauma ain't like my trauma, you know? And so one thing I think that we have to think about, Dr. Long, is coming back for that discussion. I just want to thank you all. And from the board of One West, we're all learning and growing together under the direction of Nikki Lanier and also Howard Holloman. We just thank you all for having us involved.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for this wonderful uplifting morning. You know how this was like a revival. I don't know if all you guys know about that, but at church we have these revivals once or twice a year where your spirit gets built back up. And so that's what today felt like to me, like I've been revived. And so thank you all, to all the speakers, all the participants, everyone. Thank you so much. And to my co-host, Yvonne. Thank you.